All right, everyone, we are back. Hello. And we are here with Mike. We've just played three-fourths of a Call of Cthulhu one-shot with you, ready to finish that after your interview. Um, but now we're going to change gears for a little bit and actually talk to you about uh about folklore, about all the other stuff you do and you're into. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Cool. Now, before we get started, and especially because there is a sleuth with us today, Shirley, do you want to do the honors for Mike's episode here?
Yeah, sure. I can do the honors.
Okay. And
So,
before we start, I want to say, uh, I miss Daisy's short and to the point version of this because Shirley has, but on the other hand, Shirley has really made this their own. Shirley, go.
so in the animal world, there are many ways of forming connections and creating community. Um, Relevant to our game, actually, the mycelium network with fungi, which is really neither animal nor plant. It's kind of its own thing because mushrooms are cool. Um, but there's an interconnectedness um, where even figures that are disparate are still connected in ways that may not be uh, automatically visible to the naked eye, to traditional forms of observation. Um, and much like the mighty mushrooms mycelium network, so too is Folkwise more than just the fruited spores that one might find upon the ground or upon the trees and logs. We are we are an interconnected system, and all parts of us bring this show together into a unified whole. Such as our mighty and wonderful sleuths, who are the ones who seek out along the ground to find, much like the mycelium network finds new nutrients um, for the host, so too our sleuths go and find the fertile soil of avenues of questioning in order to craft the interview that we now present to you today. So if you hear a question, a particularly poignant question or an interesting observation, don't thank us. Thank the sleuths.
Mike, I hope like a member of your family is going to like put this YouTube video on and then just be shocked to why there is like a metaphor about mushrooms at the top of your interview. But that being said, yeah, you're right, Shirley. It's not just you and me who write the questions. That being said, Mike, you want to get into some questions?
Ready for the questions.
Mike, Mike, you're a first generation college student who has completed several degrees, but what elements of academic culture do you think are part of the hidden curriculum of academia?
Oh, that is such a good
Thank
question.
you to our mycelial network of sleuths.
That is such a good question.
No,
So,
no, of sleuths.
when I first went to college, I got dropped off, my parents left, and I would call them with questions about, like, hey, how do I do X thing? Literally anything. And they would say, I don't know, you're there, figure it out, right? So much of what happens in higher ed is part of the hidden curriculum. It's part of the system, the culture of the institution that you're at. Learning that you can drop classes was a thing I didn't know you could do
Mm.
until I was a junior. Um, Learning how to go to professors' office hours, learning where the best, any of those sort of academic things, but also learning where the best spots to eat on campus are, learning when to go to game day. I did my undergrad at Ohio State, so like
Big deal.
going to the game was a big deal. Here, undergrads at IU, where I'm at now, going to the tailgate is the big deal,
That's right.
right? So much of what you do here, from in the classroom to out of the classroom, is part of that hidden curriculum. The 15-minute rule: if a professor is running late for class, how long can I leave without getting in trouble? That's part of that hidden curriculum, that college lore, that student centered knowledge. But I'd say maybe 80 to 90% of what a student goes through here is learned sort of on the fly or from people who are already part of the college network. And students who are coming in without a higher ed background or fail safes. In my family, nobody had really been to college before, um, and a lot of that you pick up along the way. For students who do have parents or older siblings or family members who've been to college, a lot of that gets built into their preparation for college too. So
Mm-hmm.
there's sort of this dichotomy between student-centered knowledge and institutional-centered knowledge, the things that we think of as college. And they're sort of paired as if they're separate, but they actually interact with one another all the time. The institution assumes student-centered knowledge a lot,
Yeah.
and builds around the fact that students like should be responding to knowing that there is a deadline to drop a class, without necessarily there being outreach on behalf of the institution. So
Hmm.
that's a big question, and I love it. And the answer is like any sort of thing that has to do with higher ed, our old joke, it's complicated. But yeah, it's really complicated and really fascinating and really interesting to just think about higher ed and the institution as a set of cultures that are intersecting and building off one another, that shape and are shaped by one another. Um,
Mhm.
so there's the student culture, there's the formal institutional culture, there's familial culture, there's townie culture, all intersecting at once to build the college experience, and all are necessary to complete that experience to some degree.
To kind of follow up and be a little more specific, how have you made sure that some of this student centered knowledge has been shared with for other first generation students in your work as an academic advisor?
Yeah, so for the last several years, I've developed and coordinated a class that is on like mapping your future and navigating the college experience,
Mm-hmm.
designed largely for exploratory students, students who come in not knowing what they want to do. IU as an institution doesn't have a very large first gen population compared to some of our other peer institutions. So we don't have like a course necessarily designed for first gen students. We have one, it's called Traditions and Cultures of IU, but it's not necessarily marketed towards first gen a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And students often take that class as like a filler class or a fallback class if they drop something else. And it's much more focused on like institutional focused. So a lot of what I've done is in training other academic advisors on how to negotiate particular student populations like first gen students, how to ask good questions, and most importantly, how to listen, how to make themselves available to students. I think ethnography and folkloristics are listening disciplines more than anything. If that's one thing that we're good at, um, it's listening. And a lot of what I've done has been trying to build networks for the institution to learn to listen to student-centered knowledge. So, for instance, one of my dissertation chapters is about women's narratives on campus,
Yeah.
and how women respond to places of danger,
Mm-hmm.
narratives that they share with one another about how to stay safe on campus. And these narratives run very much counter to the institutional narrative that IU is safe. The Title IX report comes out every year, and the whole point of that is in part to demonstrate to potential students that IU is a safe place to be. The stories that women on campus tell, the ways they communicate with one another, demonstrates explicitly and implicitly that IU is not a safe space for them. So one of the things that I encourage our administration to do, and I've been trying to do this more, is when they collect student-centered data, to not be focused purely on the quantitative. Here is a
Mm.
survey to answer, but to actually send somebody out and collect student-centered information, to listen to their stories, because people will tell you their stories. Um, but you can only serve that population if you're actually listening for what they're saying, not for what you want them to say. So that's what I've been trying to work on for years. It's hard to get a large institution to listen, especially when there's so many stakeholders.
Yeah.
Um, but so what I've done is in my training for teaching new advisors, I'm sort of forefronting that folkloristic approach, the listening approach, the ethnographic approach, the asking good questions approach, and the listening for their stories approach. And in my conversations with administration, I've been trying to forefront actual student-centered knowledge as opposed to saying we have data. Not all data is equal, and
Mm-hmm.
quantitative data should be supplemented with good qualitative, contextually situated data. So that's what I've been trying to work on for 7 years now.
And I mean, I love how you've like done like Charles Briggs knowing how to ask, but as an advisor, I think it's such like a cool way that you've like done a backdoor pilot for folkloristics in like higher ed. So bad at Ertz in chat says the nicknames for some places on campus make that real clear, and I actually think those are some things you probably can't say on Twitch without like our stream getting demonetized. But yes, I'd say if you know, you know, and it sounds like chat knows. At least people who went to IU in chat know.
We, in our campaign earlier, our one shot, we walked through Dunn's Woods, and
We
they
did,
are,
we did. I thought about that, Mike. I thought about this.
and we won't say what women on campus call those woods.
But we were walking through the woods at morning.
We're walking through the woods, yes.
Yes.
And if it were nighttime, we probably wouldn't have.
We
been.
probably should not have walked through the woods at nighttime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, you said you've been doing that for the last 7 years, but can you tell us about your new job that you're about to start next week at the School of Public Health?
Yeah, so for the past 7 years, I've been an academic advisor. I'm working my way through sort of that system from advisor to associate to senior. And I had an opportunity to move into the School of Public Health. A lot of my research has been folkloristics of health related, and then applying that to other institutional frames. So, how do we take the folkloristics of health and medical anthropology and apply those frameworks to any institutional interaction? So I'm super excited to be joining the School of Public Health. I'm going to be an assistant director there. I'll be working with all of the Masters of Public Health students, working a little bit with faculty, and largely working with the advising team there to continue training, professional development, and serving all of the undergraduates who will be going through the School of Public Health and earning their degree.
Mike, that is so cool. I think that's like a really big deal, and I'm just intensely proud of you right now.
Thank you, buddy. I super appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you to the sleuths, because I think that the next question we have lines up perfectly with this, and that is, what can folklorists take away from medical folkloristics' understanding of lay and expert ways of knowing in order to apply them on institutional cultures?
So I love this question, obviously, because it's almost all I think about.
I can tell.
Dialectic between lay and expert ways of knowing. And this is something that, comes from medical anthropology, comes from folkloristics. It comes out of sort of Foucauldian traditions.
I was going to say it comes out of, to me, I always picture it coming out of theology.
Yeah, it comes out of theology. It comes out of all of these different perspectives. But in folkloristics, we talk about lay and expert ways of knowing. We don't always talk about that dialectic between the two.
Yes, important.
And for me, it's those moments of contact where the two butt up against one another, where they interact, that's most interesting. What I think folklorists should be first and foremost public intellectuals, right? Whether we're doing work like this, what you guys do with Folkwise is absolutely incredible.
Thank you, Mike.
Build the brand. Yeah, I love Folkwise. But to not only build the brand of folklore and say it's important, but also, for instance, your response last year to the Roe v. Wade situation is the type of work that folklore should be doing.
Oh, thank you.
We should be stepping out there and saying, folklore teaches us about the world. Folklore is not just narrative, but we are experts in narrative. So when there are narrative spaces, you talked a lot about tradition and the dynamics of folklore that's conservative and its, dynamic nature. It changes, but it stays the same. In that piece that you did last year on Folkwise, that was incredible. If we think about the pandemic and sort of the work that like Andrea Kidda's done with lay perspectives of health and illness,
Yes.
And disease orientation narratives, and most importantly, what we see from all of this, I think, is how people act, how folklore shapes people's decision making, how that occurs within the context of lay ways of knowing and expert ways of knowing, how those are synthesized together.
I'm so glad you said synthesize. Exactly.
Yeah. And how institutions, especially large institutions, they think top down and they think corrective. Lay ways of knowing are to be corrected by expert ways of knowing. This happens in medicine, when in the patient-physician relationship. This happens at institutions of higher education, where advisors historically have been trained to correct student knowledge. But it's that lay way of knowing, the thing that the patient brings to the table in that patient-physician interaction, that affects what the patient's going to do. Physicians have a history of focusing on patient non-compliance and using that sort of language to privilege expert ways. But ultimately, what happens in that situation is based on what the patient is going to choose to do, how they're going to respond. Expert ways of knowing are largely coercive. Lay ways of knowing utilize and engage with expert ways of knowing, but also take in all of those spheres of influence, right, from their lay perspectives. Expert ways of knowing do that too. They privilege things like scientific approaches, which is fundamentally a narrative, right? In a postmodern sense, it's a grand narrative. They privilege things like credentialism. When we think about the way people learn to interact with their world, what we take from medical folkloristics is knowing that the lay and expert dichotomy is a conversation that synthesizes ultimately how people will choose to behave. And it's, if we're advocating on behalf of people like patients or students or anyone in a power low position, which I think folklorists have historically done.
Yes.
We want to do so with approaching the fact that their perspectives for them, for their actions, are as equally valid as the expert positions, right? So people who are anti-vaccine or anti-mask, we can talk about the narratives that they tell and how that shapes their behavior. We probably want to correct that, but folkloristics as a discipline will tell us the way to do that is not to tell them they're wrong. The minute that you push back and say your beliefs are invalid, your way of knowing is invalid, we've shut down that conversation, right? So if there's something that we can take from that lay and expert dichotomy, it's that as folklorists who are experts in genre, experts in narrative, experts in communication, we should be working with these people to help bridge the gap between lay and expert, acknowledging that those things work together all the time to shape human behavior. I feel like I was rambling.
No, I don't think you were, because it was like, in many ways, like you went to answer the question and you said, okay, let me apply this to something, society. Yeah. And then you did a very good job of explaining it. You know what I mean? So I think that was actually, I followed it very well. I hope. Yeah. Chat said you weren't rambling. In fact, also two here in chat said, in my work, I'm constantly thinking about a patient's knowledge of their own body, but how that knowledge is deemed unintelligible by physicians who endorse conventional modes of medical authority. That's a similar thing, like the conventional medical authority versus like what a patient knows about their own body, and how are you going to talk to each one of them about their expertise in like the different spheres of their expertise, right?
Right, because we're privileging that orthodox biomedical Western approach to knowing about the world around you. my original dissertation topic that I was doing when we were finishing coursework and doing quals,
Mm-hmm.
I did preliminary work in Gibson and Posey counties with
Yes.
people who who understand their environment and their health is being contaminated by fracking.
Mm-hmm.
What was very interesting there is they were able to say, our bodies are sick. Our land is sick. We can see that it's sick because we know what normal is. When experts were brought in, the EPA, the local businesses, and tested things, much like what happened in East Palestine, Ohio,
Yeah.
they're saying things are normal. They test within the normal range. So the contest is over what is considered normal by who and when.
Damn. Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about how people act, how they express themselves, how they engage with the world around them, we're largely doing that in this context. They were doing it narratively and saying, no, 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 we understand our health and let us tell you how we know. Phil Brown calls this popular epidemiology and popular understanding the etiology in a popular sense. So they were able to say, we know what's normal. We know the baseline. We have an embodied measurement of that, something that we've experienced. And we can look at how things have changed, when and why. And that mimics in many ways the scientific method. So it's borrowing from orthodox knowing, but orthodox ways of knowing, biomedical perspectives, dismiss that as invalid, right? It's anecdotal. It's not good data. What we can do as folklorists who understand both lay and expert ways of knowing are built as genres or a collection of genres that are narrativized in different ways is maybe help to bridge that gap, right? To act as advocates on behalf of the people around us and to engage intentionally as public intellectuals, trying maybe to, if you're interested in medicine, for instance, getting involved in medical policy like Diane does. I think for us, that dialectic, understanding that moment of contact, is what we can be experts in.
Mike, incredible answer. Maybe I wish there was like a Wisey Awards category for best individual answer. It was very good. Hey, I'm gonna ask you a next question, and it is when and why and how did you manage to get an MBA between your master's and PhD?
This is the stupidest story. I mean this legitimately. So
I'm settling in.
I finished my undergrad at Ohio State and applied for graduate programs. I got into IU, but I got a better deal from BGSU for my master's.
Go Falcons.
Go Falcons, right? So I went to BG to do a master's in popular culture, and I applied to IU for the PhD program. That's the one place I really wanted to go. Got in, got an excellent aid package, but didn't know if I wanted to spend the next few years getting a PhD. I thought few years, it's been more than a few. But, okay.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. So I have a family. They sacrificed a lot just for me to get my first degree. I was working in the Office of Multicultural Affairs at BG when I was invited to an event, and the new dean of the School of Business was there. He and I met at this dinner, and we were talking. I was talking about folklore and popular culture and the intersection of mass and folk culture. And he was like, have you ever thought about that from a business context? And I said, no. And he said, you really should apply to our MBA program and think about how that intersects with what you're talking about. Mass culture is largely focused on business, and so on. And he's like, we do have a 12-month intensive MBA program. So I deferred IU for a year. And he emailed me and was like, you really should apply. I deferred IU for a year and applied to that program, was accepted and got an assistantship. And I kind of really like numbers. So some people are linguistically minded, some people are mathematically minded. I love the humanities and the arts. That's my passion. I've always been more numerically minded.
This is why TTRPGs fit in perfectly.
My favorite genre of video game is role-playing games because it's numbers porn, right?
Yeah.
I play sports video games because, like, make numbers go up.
Yeah, have you seen that tweet that was like, my boyfriend thinks Fire Emblem is stupid, but he's literally watching baseball, America's turn-based RPG.
Exactly. I love baseball and I love football. I love statistics. I do those things for fun. So the MBA was kind of a thing. I was like, I don't know if I want to go do the PhD. It only takes 12 months. I don't have a better opportunity. It sounds interesting. I like numbers. So I did it.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from that experience. Both in engaging with the people who were there, taking classes in like organizational behavior, being like, oh, this is cultural theory in a business context.
Mm-hmm.
But this is putting folklore to use that book as a framework.
Yeah.
But it was also really interesting to see the way that people are trained in business and to see the way that they dismiss certain things, especially when they're pointed out to them that, like, hey, maybe capitalism is just an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. Maybe not the best thing ever. They don't like it when you say that. But it was something that I did.
Over here trying to talk about dialectics to them.
Yeah. I'm like, actually, let's talk about the market not as like a group of people we need to exploit, but as a group of people we should listen to. And they're like, no, we don't listen to them.
Oh.
Damn. So close.
So close.
But it was kind of a thing I did on a lark because I didn't know what else to do and because I met the right person at the right time.
So 2 follow-ups to that. Number 1, did that help you get your current job that you have an MBA too?
Nobody's ever said it explicitly, but I would argue the answer is yes.
Okay.
The dean of the School of Public Health that met him, he was very interested in talking to me about the MBA. But then when I mentioned what I'm doing with my research, we shifted to that.
Oh, nice.
I think the MBA was the entry point to that conversation that allowed me the opportunity to say, hey, and I'm doing this really cool thing. Let me tell you about that. And he became very interested in the folkloristic approach.
That is cool. The way you got your foot in the door. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it opens doors that might otherwise be closed to us to take those other opportunities. Diane, in vernacular terms, Diane Goldstein's presidential address. We were there in Rhode Island when she gave it. It was a sort of a mic.
We were next to each other. You were at least in the same row.
6 inches apart.
6 inches.
She says, do good work and call yourself a
folklorist. Yep.
Doesn't matter where you do that. If there's folklore in the boardroom, folklorists should be in the boardroom.
That's right. If there's folklore in Breath of the Wild, a folklorist should be in Hyrule.
Yes, absolutely. We belong everywhere that there's folklore, and there's folklore everywhere. So finding opportunities to say, hey, I can do this thing that speaks to you. That door's cracked open. Let me kick it in with folklore.
Hell yeah. Second question. Was that your professor with your MBA? Was that Brian's dad?
It was.
That's
Brian's
so
dad.
funny to me. That's our friend. And then we met his son in Indiana.
Yes. He taught my organizational behavior class.
That's so cool.
Was my favorite class of the MBA.
Shouts to Brian and his dad if you're listening. Last question. Speaking of that conversation you had with Brian's dad about you ever thought about mass and popular culture for your MBA. I have a question about mass and popular culture. Yeah. How did 9/11 rapidly cause a shift in public rhetoric and encourage men to undertake heroic roles while reconstructing traditional femininity characterized by dependence and fragility?
Oof.
Wow. A shitty master's thesis, my guy.
The sleuths didn't think so.
No, I hope nobody actually read that.
The sleuths did?
Did they?
The Mycelium Network knows all.
So, post 9/11, and actually in moments of cultural trauma, tend to run home to narrative.
That's right.
Right. So, post 9/11, America ran home to narratives. And what were those narratives we ran home to? We ran home to a very traditional, we might call it Reaganite sort of narrative of a strong America, a masculine America, a hard-bodied America, Susan Jeffords would call it. But it actually goes back way, way further than that. It is the founding myth of America, and I do mean that in the way that we folklorists use it.
Yeah.
Is the myth of the Western frontier. It is the myth of the hard-bodied man who protects the world, and the traditional feminine mother figure who needs to be protected. A narrative yeah, it's a narrative that otherizes people who are different from us.
Mm-hmm.
In the historical sense, that would be indigenous people or people from other countries. In the post 9/11 sense, it was anyone who appeared to be Middle Eastern. That included South Asian people, for instance.
Yeah.
We ran home to narrative, and we ran home to narrative hard. We reinforced those narratives so much so that on the 9/12, the day after 9/11, several pictures in newspapers were of not 9/11 because they weren't good pictures.
Yeah.
They were of the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah.
Of firefighters carrying children out of the wreckage. There were pictures of female first responders at Ground Zero that were sort of eliminated very intentionally from the public record, because it's not a space where women belong in this moment of cultural trauma. Women went from being soccer moms to being moms that responded by keeping the kids home and keeping them safe. Men went from being sort of the provider to a very much traditionalized, hard-bodied first responder. That was the narrative we built. And that is a narrative that repeats over and over again through American history in moments of cultural trauma. It happened during the recession in the 80s. That's one of the things that helped Reagan build power in the early 80s, was building on and appropriating these traditional narratives that are very American. So there's sort of three steps. There's sort of bringing out this masculine American mythology and relying on this sort of colonial settler frontier, independent, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, hard body masculinity. There's the femininity, where we then sort of juxtapose those two things together and say the women are to be protected. They are within the house. They need to be kept separate from. And then there's the process of otherizing, of Edward Said might call it orientalizing, people who are different from us. And it requires that we have an enemy. It requires somebody who is different from us. So Native American captivity narratives were very popular in the US as we expanded west, even though most of them were at the very least embellished. A lot of them were flat out false. We get a lot of the same things with people crossing the border illegally, and that hasn't stopped in the last 20 years. We get a lot of those with the reemergence of the thankful terrorist narrative. And it's always about setting us against someone else because we need to recover from cultural trauma. But it was a very shitty thesis.
The sleuth skimmed it. I don't know how they didn't like parse and critique it. They at least skimmed it.
Yeah.
You want to move in some fun questions? Certainly more fun than that last one.
I mean, they're right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
Thank you, sleuths. I keep saying thank you because I was more involved with the actual like question writing than I am most weeks, just because I don't know, wanted to nail this. But thank you to all your hard work, Sleuth Chrissy. You really knocked it out of the park with those questions. All right, let's get into the fun shit. Mike, can you tell the chat the origin of the spelling of your name?
Dom, you're going to make me do this in the public.
Yep.
Yes.
Mike WIATROWSKI.
Yes. So I am not Mike MYC. That's not how you spell my name.
Well, hey, prescriptive versus descriptive.
If you were to pull my birth certificate, as people might say, what's on your birth certificate? It's Michael. And I'm actually a junior. I'm named after my father. So I'm Michael WIATROWSKI Jr. He's Michael WIATROWSKI Sr. When I was a kid, one of the ways people distinguished us was they would call him Mike or Big Mike, and I was often Michael. I had no idea how to spell Mike when I was like 5. None, because nobody called me that. I learned how to spell my name, Michael. And Dad was just Dad. When I went to kindergarten, people started calling me Mike. So I sounded it out. Mike sounds like my cat, right?
My cat. Yeah, perfect.
I smashed those two together, and no one corrected me. And it stuck for years, and people just assumed it was. There's like an Eastern European spelling of Michael that's Mychal.
Mm-hmm.
People assumed that, especially with my very Polish sounding last name. They
Yeah.
were like, yeah, he's just a weird guy. But it's because 5-year-old Mike didn't know how to spell his name.
I respect that. I respect the commitment to the bit after all these years.
Baby.
I guess you set this up by saying, and no one assumed it wasn't the Polish spelling. Mike, what word or phrase in your lexicon is your biggest East Coast giveaway?
Use guys, I think. Probably. Pluralizing both. When we were driving to Rhode Island, we're going back. Dom.
We're going back.
We're going back. So Dom and I, for those of you that don't know, in 2013, Dom and I, along with our friend Jesse Fivecoat, another folklorist, and Emily Burke, another folklorist, drove from Bloomington, Indiana to Providence, Rhode Island.
It is longer than it sounds.
Way longer than it sounds. I rented us a car. I did the driving. But as we got closer and closer to home, North Jersey, New York, they pointed out that my lexicon changed.
Can I tell you where it changed?
Please tell me where it changed.
A Turkey Hill.
Sure.
You found a Turkey Hill and then you code switched.
Yeah, and then I code switched. And the thing that people catch it most on in the Midwest, I have a a speech impediment, accent. Everywhere I've ever lived, people are like, "Where are you from?"
I was going to call it an idiolect.
Yeah, and oh, damn, Dom, getting folklorist.
Thank you.
It's an idiolect, yeah. So people have always asked me, like, where are you from? But in the Midwest, people always assume it's from the East. When I hit the "yous guys," what are you guys doing? Where you pluralize both you and guys.
Mike, in your pre-interview forum, you mentioned that your son Lucas is your favorite person and the coolest person you know. What's the coolest thing your son Lucas does on a daily basis?
The coolest thing Lucas does on a daily basis is exist.
Ah, look at that.
Noted Son-Haver MYC WIATROWSKI.
Noted Son-Haver.
Noted Son-Haver.
Awesome. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of literally everything that person does. He is my favorite person in the world. He and I have been playing a lot of video games together lately.
Lately?
Yeah.
Since I've met you, you've been playing video games together.
Sure, absolutely. But lately we've been doing a lot of Mario Kart.
Nice.
We've been playing Metroid Dread together a little bit. He helped me I love Metroid Dread.
John Fenn said he will only come on Folkwise if he gets to play Metroid Dread.
It's such a good game. It's my favorite Metroid.
Oh, hell yeah.
Metroid Dread.
But, he and I just like talk about stuff. Just his existence and getting to listen to the way he thinks about the world. Recognize that he is a whole ass person with, you think about like human interiority and like what's it like to be human, and just to watch him grow from like this little teeny tiny person who fit in my hand, who couldn't say a word or let me know what he needed, to this person who has such an incredible understanding about the world around him and such incredible empathy for other humans, is my favorite thing about him, just that he exists.
Mike, when I edit this for YouTube, can I like quietly play the piano part from Dear Theodosia from Hamilton in the background? Because that was like a beautiful dad sentiment. Look at my son.
Yeah, just look at my son.
Look at my son. And last one, very personal, because you are the third, I think. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong. Or fourth, depending on your count. The third or fourth, let's say fourth, because I think, because Robin came on when we beat Bayonetta as like our senior Bayonetta correspondent, because you are the fourth Guts alumnus on the show, and that is our Bloomington Adults Only Smash League Grown Ups as Tournaments of Smash, which I think Mike and I might be considered like the two people who founded it.
You helped me unlock all of the characters on Smash.
On Smash Wii U, yeah.
And then we invited people over to my place, Waitrowski Memorial Stadium.
Waitrowski Memorial Stadium.
The first Guts tournament that I believe Megan beat Kurt at. Am I
Megan
remembering
beat
that?
Kurt, yes. Kurt, friend of the show, PogChamp.
Yep.
Kathleen and Robin and Mike, all Guts alums who have been on the show. But that being said, other than your own signature cocktail, which was a glass of wines, plural, with a sugar cookie garnish, what was your favorite Guts cocktail?
Oh my God.
That's what I thought your East Coast giveaway was going to be, glass of wines.
Yeah, it was a glass of wines with a sugar cookie on the rim in a paper cup. Thank you. Everything Kurt made was
Kurt's a genius.
He is a mixologist genius.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a favorite. They were all favorites because each one, like the sugar cookie on a paper cup with wines in it, and it was a Shiraz, if I remember right.
It was several wines. It was the one.
It embodied me, right? It was able to, and I'm sure with help, because I showed up a little late and got my sugar cookie cup. He was able to embody everyone in their drink. Like
he really was.
When a drink was described and you're like, Kurt made this for X, it was like, yeah, that checks out.
Kurt, I see So Bad It Hurts in chat, and I remember Kurt's cocktail for him was like a Mexican Coke with a like raspberry vinegar shrub on top. And it sounds weird, but it was like soda, but spicy.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, soda, but spicy. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen somebody more expertly just be like, this is you in a drink. And everybody be like, yes, it is. Thank you, sir.
Mine, if Chad is wondering, mine was a Tom Collins, but with grapefruit LaCroix, and it was called a Dom Corins.
Yeah.
For Fire Emblem. Yeah.
Right. Would anybody in chat say that's wrong? I don't think so.
Not at all. Not at all.
Kurt assigned cocktail.
Well, oh yeah. What is your Kurt assigned cocktail quiz? Well, I think Kurt said he was most proud. What did Kurt say? Did he say he was most proud of the witch time? I think because that like, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said like once he figured out like the combination between like hot peppers, blackberries, and thyme, he was like, I've really done something.
Yeah, I think that's right. Was that at Caroline's house?
That was Caroline's house. Actually, in the wine and a cookie in a paper cup was Caroline's house too. That was before he left for Thailand for field work. When we had a tournament, a top 8 invitational tournament of the bottom 8 players. One of the most fun nights I've ever had.
Yeah, I did not hit the hoo-ha. I never once hit it.
You never once, and the hoo-ha was right there.
I was also great. All of the pits of every Smash is littered with the corpses of self-death ditties.
I was gonna say of your Ryu that wanted to Tatsu to the stage instead of Shoryuken, and you just floated to your death.
That's all I want to do.
While I get the tier list up, Shirley, can you ask Mike the great chat question we have there?
Yes. I'm also incredibly interested in this. As a fellow lover of a good mug, I must ask you to choose a child. And do you have a favorite mug?
Behind you.
Behind you.
Yes.
Or just in general, if it's not on display.
And you see them all. My favorite mug is actually in the most folklore, the one that's on my desk. The most folklore, it's a handcrafted pottery mug.
Oh, sorry. Show it again. I blocked you by opening the window.
So it's just like a handcrafted
Beautiful.
mug.
Oh, that's great. I like the glaze.
It's a really nice glaze. I love this mug. But I have these here with my little teapot behind me because I'll make tea for students too.
Cool.
My favorite one here is Batman.
Oh, I saw the Batman
wonderful.
one.
Batman.
Is that like
yeah.
It's also giant. It's as You know, like the size of your
It's giant.
face.
That's some, like, what, Denny O'Neil 1970s Batman?
Yes, it is. Denny O'Neil, 1970s Batman.
Nice.
So this is the mug that before I got the pottery one, it was this I used for everything. I would make oatmeal in it. I would drink tea out of it, whatever.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Obviously, Boba Fett is a good one too. A lot of these are IU related,
Mm-hmm.
but
I see.
can't see this one.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
This is a really good one too.
Spoopy.
That's a beautiful one.
So I like that. Ellie got me
Ellie,
this. Ellie, Eleanor Haskins.
Eleanor
Well,
Haskin. I was like, Ellie Dassler. No, Eleanor, the other folklorist Ellie.
the other folklorist Ellie got me this, which
This is fine.
this is Fine Dog mug. That
Mhm.
the one where the
This
world's
is-
on.
This is
around.
fine.
This
This is fine. This is fine.
So I love them all. That's why I got the little shelf to put them on.
That's beautiful.
All
But
right.
Batman is
Gotta love bugs.
So this is speaking. Actually, I was going to speaking of Batman. No, not speaking of Batman. Mike,
Yeah.
you are a boon companion of mine from grad school, and you're also one of the first people I know, like I knew in like around my year to have like published. Because you had a book about like folklore and the CW shows come out when we
Yeah.
were like around second or third year in grad school, right?
Yep. So Corey Barker and I, who's a great communication scholar, social TV scholar. He works at Bradley University now.
Oh, I was going to ask, where is he now? Yeah.
He's at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. When he and I were in our master's program, we put on a conference. And then from that conference, we created our first book, a book of edited collections. Then we did a book on Smallville, then one on Arrow, and then one on Netflix as sort of like a cultural entity.
That's in the chat right now. The link to the Arrow book on it, bookshop.com. Buy the book. That being said, Mike, the question I love to ask: have you ever made a tier list?
I love tier lists. Lucas and I make tier lists sometimes.
Damn, Lucas is cool. Because can you believe most people say no?
Oh no, we fucking love tier lists. We did one for fast food the other day, and he was like, "Where does A&W go?" Like, who knows A&W? My kid, that's who.
Anyone who's driven from Bloomington to Bowling Green, because there's that one off, like around Fort Wayne.
That one A&W that's right around Fort. Yeah.
That's right. That's the only one I've been to. So, people in chat may know the tier lists come from fighting games as a way to rank character choice, but they also, on Twitch, are ways to organize and rank everyday life, like fast food. Or Mike's tier list right now. I just realized the background is still Bloomington Horror. That actually looks really cool. Mike's tier list right now. Mike, the Herculean task, the Heraclean task of ranking the Arrowverse.
Okay.
No Batman, but on a scale from S being, they labeled it fantastic. I always say masterclass. S being a grade higher than A, and D being barely passing. I want you to rank the 10 years of shared continuity CW superhero melodramas.
Okay.
You want to get started?
I am into this.
First and foremost is the man himself, Arrow.
Arrow is A, high A?
High A. Okay, I respect high A.
I think high A.
Do you know what I always say about Arrow?
What's that?
The season's only as good as the island. Like what he's doing in the past determines how good the rest of the season is.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Next up,
text of compared just to one another, not objectively good.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think we understand.
Making sure for chat.
Next up is Batwoman.
I hate to say it. Batwoman's not great.
Batwoman was troubled.
Yes.
Like the production was troubled.
Yes. This the whole thing. I think it's D tier.
Not great, D tier. Okay. Next up, Black Lightning.
Black Lightning was completely okay. It was inoffensive. It was fine. It's D tier. It's that thing that you forget, like, that existed.
Completely okay show. So
But it's a completely okay show. C
Like a
tier.
high C?
Yeah, I think
Great.
high C. Yeah, yeah.
Next up, Constantine. Constantine.
I'll be honest. I think I liked it more than it deserved.
Ooh.
So
Zesty.
I would put it at B. That's where I would put it.
At what did you say? B?
B. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Next, Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow was good until it wasn't.
Okay. Oh yeah. I'll agree.
So I would put it just above Constantine.
Just above Constantine at like top of A.
Yep.
Good. Next up, Supergirl.
Supergirl just below Arrow, A tier.
Nice. I know friend of the show,
pretty good.
Jesse Riddle, like world's biggest Supergirl fan.
Supergirl is pretty good. Arrow at its best is better than Supergirl at its best, but Supergirl is maybe more consistent.
Oh, that is very true. Yeah.
Mm.
So bad it hurts says Constantine is better in Legends.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's good distinction. Next up, Flash.
I think this is where it belongs. I think it belongs above DC Legends, below Supergirl, so high B tier.
Oh, Mike, I love the Flash.
So
I get that the Flash is like corny and the effects are bad, but I just love that cast.
I do too, and we did our boy dirty in that show, right? Like the writers did no favors to anyone.
Yeah.
So I think performance, if we're going purely performance, it's S tier.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going based on like the show as a whole, it's good. It's watchable. It lasted for a while. So
yeah.
High B tier.
Yeah. High beer. I'll accept high B. Two left. We got Stargirl.
I have to be transparent here. I've never seen a
single episode of Stargirl either.
Not even a one. So I don't know.
Leave it off the list.
Yeah, or ask chat. What's chat think? Has chat seen Stargirl?
Do you have any? Yeah, I respect that Mike is privileging lay knowledge, and he's going to ask chat to rank Stargirl for him.
I put my faith in the heart of the chat.
Sheep says never seen it. Sheep's another guts head. Never seen it. So bad it hurts. Another gutser. Never seen it. Somehow D. Also never seen it. No one has actually seen Stargirl. Oh no.
I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, I've seen the ads for it. It's like there's like a really cool poster at my comic book store, but
yeah, I just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So we leave it off for now.
Leave it off for now and go to Superman and Lois.
It was bad, right? Like the worst. It's F tier to me.
I think it's the most like squandered potential.
It could have been.
It could have been great.
Been. If Smallville,
well, you know what we can do. Keep talking, and I will do something for you.
Yeah. So Superman and Lois, it was just so disappointing because it could have been so good. There's so much it could have done, and everything that it could have done, it's like they were like, what if we did that but bad? So I think it's out of all of these, the only one that I would say is almost unwatchable, unless Stargirl's bad. Stargirl's.
Well, what do you want to do about? You were talking about Smallville. Are you saying that Smallgirl has a? I mean, like I thought Smallgirl might be on this the way that like the Tobey Maguire movies are on MCU tier list because they got like retconned in like in the multiverse crossover.
Yeah. So if you think about it, if we're adding that in, if Smallville belongs in the Arrowverse, different times, right? Different perspectives on storytelling. But for what it was when it was told in the context of this, Smallville's S tier.
Somebody say, oh, I'm gonna do it. Somebody save me.
Absolutely.
All right, so Mike, if you're not watching on Twitch, I have just created a text overlay that just says "Somebody save me," and it is going to be the entirety of the S tier bar. It's just the words "Somebody save me."
Somebody save me, and we know what the S and S tier is for Superman. It's for Smallville.
It's for Somebody save me.
Somebody save me. Yeah.
Somebody say.
Now, chat said, I don't think I've seen a no S tier list before. I think this is the second. The last S tier was when we had Hart Bullock, Chinese-born food waste scholar, to rank the best American comfort food, and he did not put an S tier, and then he said, because there's only one American comfort food I can put in S tier, and it's not on this list, and it is the English muffin breakfast sandwich. And so we had to do a similar thing where we put breakfast sandwich. We just wrote out breakfast sandwich and put it in S tier. So Smallville is the English muffin breakfast sandwich of the CW.
Print it. Goes. That needs to go on the network, right?
I mean, it's. I guess
It's on the
I
back
think so.
of the-
I can't explain why that makes sense to me, but it absolutely makes sense to me.
It is the most American way to put it, right?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm going to cut back to this screen and say, Mike, before we get to the end of your interview and then finish our Call of Cthulhu one shot,
Yes.
if people want to see or read or learn more about you, where should they go? What should they pick up?
That is a good question.
They should go. They should go to the School of Public Health.
They should come to the school. You
Have some tea.
They should go to AFS if they're not going to Caroline's wedding in November. Presenting at AFS for the first time. Hopefully, presenting at AFS
Oh,
for the first time. So
it's never like it's. I think with AFS, it's never a problem of like, will I present? It's like, will it be like a panel session that people, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, it's all about getting like that after lunch Friday panel session. That's the shit you apply for.
It's a pre-constructed panel with Diane and Kira and Lynn McNeil.
Who's number 3?
Diane Goldstein, Kira, what's his last name? I don't remember. He's from Norway.
Oh, cool. An international scholar.
And Lynn McNeil.
Oh,
so
friend of the show, Lynn McNeil.
Yes, I am the super weak link in that chain.
No, Mike. No one can sit through this interview and say that.
Yeah, if you want to come watch me embarrass myself, AFS.
And he's not talking about the panel. He's gonna try to do a flip in the pool.
I will try to do a flip.
We did have a pool party at the last AFS. It was so much fun.
Yeah, Dom knows that I'm not a strong swimmer and that I can't swim, even though I grew up on the water. I'll do a flip in the pool though, as long as somebody.
Mike grew up on the water, and he min-maxed into beach guy, but not swim guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly what it is. But yeah, I mean, you can pick up any of the books if you want. If you're interested in the topics, you can email me. You can read my terrible thesis. The dissertation should be up soon-ish if you want to read that. But also just like talk to me, hang out with me, email me.
Yeah.
Hit me up on the twitters.com for the next 10 days while it exists.
Everyone, you know what to do at the end of Mike's interview, and that is ladders in chat for Mike.
Ladders in chat.
Spam those ladders in lieu of Mike being able to hear your applause. If you're not subscribed, give him a hearty GG or ask someone politely request that someone buy you a sub.
Gift those peoples a sub.
Gift the peoples a sub. And thank you so much, Mike. Man, thank you so much for coming on. That was so much fun.
I want to thank you and the whole Folkwise team, both for this, hanging out with you, but also for everything that you guys do. What you're doing here, I think, is incredibly important work, and I think it's way undervalued in our discipline as like a professional thing to really engage with. You guys do such important and incredible work. So I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank chat for supporting these guys and making sure that they can continue to do this. This is a wonderful thing both for nerds and folklorists and everyone who's interested in what it is that folklorists do.
Mike, you're the best. Folklorist, the higher ed professional and noted Son-Haver Mike WIATROWSKI. Round of applause, everyone. Ladders in chat.
Thank you all.